It was pretty difficult. The deafness we could cope with, but the autism just changed everything.
How was I when he was diagnosed as autistic? Well, I was shocked, and it took a while to accept it.
He has a learning disability, severe. He's profoundly deaf and he's developmentally delayed, which have all compounded on the autism.
Autism comes from the word autos in Greek, which means self. And autism is where the development of a child is different from other children. And it's thought that it's probably, in straightforward terms, to do with the wiring in the brain being different. And that leads to a lot of differences in the way children behave.
We think that our deaf son Jake is possibly autistic, and that's because he hasn't developed any language yet. We know he's deaf, but something is not quite right. His behaviour is strange. He plays on his own. He's never really involved with his friends. He lines his toy cars up one behind the other in perfect order.
We suspect there's something wrong with Jake, for various reasons. We're not sure what it is, possibly autism. We're not sure. We think it's best to go to the doctor. Hopefully they can diagnose autism so that he can get a referral. Fingers crossed.
It's important for a deaf child to be referred to a specialist CAMS or a CAMS that understands deaf children, because in the past it's been common for the diagnosis of autism to be missed in deaf children or for a misdiagnosis to be made.
Well, for some time now the three of us have been regularly coming here for assessments. All different types of assessments, for example, to see the psychiatrist regarding mental health issues, to the psychologist for his behaviour, to speech and language therapy, and today is the final assessment.
How would you compare Jake's behaviour to that of his peers?
Well, he likes to play on his own. He likes to do things like drawing, keep to himself. He doesn't show us what he's drawn. Whereas his brothers and sisters will always come up to me and say, look, this is what I've done. It's quite nice. Makes me feel involved, whereas Jake's different. Jake likes to be in his own world. He likes to play with his toys and no other toys. He doesn't want to share. And also, he's very tidy. He's very meticulous with the way he orders his toys, like his cars are always in a line. If we or his brother or sisters touch or move them, he'll get really angry. It'll take such a long time to calm him down.
Was there ever a time when he stopped signing for some months?
When he was first born, we'd teach him to sign and he'd copy with us. He'd sign some words back. And then when he was about 2.5, he just stopped. He went into himself and started talking to himself. He didn't really talk to anybody else. He wouldn't tell us what he wanted. He wouldn't point to anything. He just concentrated on himself. There was also occasions when we were talking and he would repeat what we were saying, repeating the same signs. And we didn't know what it was.
This is Jake's report. He's been diagnosed with autism. I'm relieved because I want to make sure he gets all the support he needs in the future. I also want to see him have a happy and healthy life.
The main symptoms of autism relate to social and communication difficulties and repetitive and unusual behaviours. To go into a bit more detail, children with autism tend to be isolated, they tend to play on their own, they have few friends, they have difficulty sharing, taking turns, they have difficulty with peer relationships, and they also have difficulty understanding the emotions of other people. They also have delays in imagination skills, and they tend to have a range of repetitive behaviours or interests, preoccupations, those kinds of things. A child's social skills are affected by autism in that they tend to be more isolated, they're more likely to play alone, they're more likely to have problems making friends, understanding other children, and they might struggle more in school.
My son's social skills are very limited. As a toddler, he didn't want to be touched, kissed, cuddled. It was really quite heartbreaking for mum, dad, grandma. As he's got a little bit older, he's now realised that people can support in his play, in what he wants to do, so he is becoming a little bit more sociable as he becomes older.
Our son's social skills, well, he's really focused on himself all the time. He'll play by himself, and he's very focused on the things he enjoys. He doesn't like speaking to other people. I think it frightens him to make eye contact. It's scary for him, and I think that's part of his autism.
Autism has a big effect on my daughter's ability to socialise. She's quite solitary in her play, and she much prefers to be with adults than children. She's not bothered about other children. She has no friends. She's not interested in making friends or having those relationships.
A child with autism has real difficulty understanding their parents or putting themselves into the head of their parents. And that means that it's more important for the parents to be patient and to try and understand what the needs of the autistic child are and to understand where the child's coming from. A child's communication skills may be affected by autism in a number of ways. The first is that often language is delayed, and that's delayed whether it's oral language in a hearing child or British Sign Language in a deaf child. So it can be delayed whatever the language that's being used. The other thing is that social use of language is affected. So children have much more difficulty having a conversation, being able to build a conversation, and they're also more likely to use repetitive or unusual language.
He didn't sign, nor had any communication for a long time. It was just nothing. Usually any sign communication was one way. We'd sign at him, but get nothing back. When he was younger, to communicate, he would just pull my wrist and point at different things. We continued just trying to sign to him for a long time, until he was about 5, when communication suddenly started. He'd sign drink, simple words now and again. Then, as he got older, we suddenly started to see responses from him. So instead of just one-way dialogue, it was now two-way, and we were able to communicate. He could understand things better, whereas before there was a lot of frustration, not being able to communicate with each other. It was so difficult. It was hard work at the start, but it has improved over time. It's better now. There are still occasions where he won't understand, and I'll have to find another way of explaining something. For example, I'll show him a picture, or by drawing things. And the same goes for him if we cannot understand what he's trying to say. He'll draw pictures so that we understand. Oh, that's it. It helps us. So really, it's about finding different ways of helping each other to understand.
Yes, his language, for example, words such as where, who or what, he hasn't quite grasped yet. It's hard. We're trying to teach him, but it's difficult for him to understand those words. For example, the word where. If you ask him where, he doesn't know. It's difficult.
If we show him a photograph of his friends, he'll sign NNNN for their name. So we'll sign, fingerspell the name, and then finally he got it, and he's now fingerspelling a lot. Before, when he was growing up, there was nothing. Now he's found a way of communicating with us. But our fingerspelling receptive skills aren't very good. We'll have to say, too fast,
too
slow
quick.
down.
As far as communication, the autism really affects her ability to communicate. We signed with her for several years before she produced her first sign. She understands so much, but it's very difficult for her to communicate back and express herself. So she really only responds with one sign answers, or she only freely communicates to us with things or for things that will meet her basic needs.
Drive, walking, ice cream, dinner, McDonald's, big, buttons, home, computer, bath, bed, sleep.
Yes! The communication strategies we use with him are still very infantile. He generally leads you by the hand to things he wants or pushes you towards things. He does wear bilateral cochlear implants, so we use our voice and expect him to use his voice, although he doesn't speak, as much as possible. And we also use PEX system with him, which is a picture exchange communication system, which is a way for him to tell us what he wants via passing us or exchanging with us a picture of what he actually wants. His obsessions have varied over time. Going back to a time I remember, it was coat hangers. He just liked the way they looked. He would happily lay down and look at a coat hanger for an hour. He also liked aerials on top of houses. Insects is one at the moment he very much likes. He goes looking for cobwebs to find the insects and would watch them for long periods of time. More recently, his biggest obsession is writing numbers, and he would want my hand over his hand to help him write numbers, and it has to be 1 through to 10, and he would happily sit there all day long and do that. But when the activity stops, you do see severe behavioural outbursts from him at those times.
A child with autism often has repetitive behaviours or interests, so they may be interested in collecting blue tack or paper clips or unusual things, or they may have really intense interests in one particular thing, so they may watch DVDs of one particular programme over and over and over again. They're also more likely to be interested in sensory aspects of the environment, which is another thing that can create confusions with deaf children. So they may be very interested in things that swirl or twist or turn or spin. They may also have a range of unusual movements, so they may rock or jump up and down on the spot or flap their hands when they're excited or worried. The development of imagination is delayed in autism. So, for example, children may be less likely to role play or play imaginatively with toys.
Autism has a huge effect on my daughter's imaginative skills, basically because she doesn't have any. She can't have any form of imaginative play because she just doesn't know how to.
For a lot of things, you need to get into his way of thinking. Otherwise, it's too hard to understand. That's a part of autism. So you have to switch places to see things from his point of view. I think pictures, photos and signing are important as well, because when he's older, it would be good for him to be able to communicate with other deaf people. And without signing, it wouldn't be very good for him. How would he communicate with deaf people? Yes, he needs signing.
His imagination, again, is very limited. In fact, I've not seen him demonstrate any imagination skills. If he is shown one way to play, then that's the only way he knows how to play. He doesn't have the imagination to take that play any further.
Advice for other parents. Sometimes you might have to fight for what you want for your child, because at the end of the day, you know your child best. So be prepared to put up a fight and make sure you get what your child needs, and that you get what you need as a family. You need support, you need respite care and help, but also don't be afraid. When we found out our daughter was autistic, it was really scary, but 13 years down the road, we're still here, and we love her so much. And yeah, we can't imagine life without her, so don't worry and don't be scared.
Our son's autism has been a big change to our lives. We have to make sure he's kept safe, he's happy, and he understands things. It requires a lot of attention.
Always have hope. I would also say visit older children, other children with a similar diagnosis to your child's. I did that when he was just 6 months old, and I was inspired by the children I had, and I understood that he could have a fulfilled, enriched, positive life like a lot of these other children had. That made me feel a lot better about his diagnosis. I would also advise other parents that it isn't always an easy journey. It is hard work at times, but it is all worth it in the end.
I think the first message I'd give to new parents is don't worry and enjoy your child, because children with autism are just as likely to be lovely as children without autism. I think the second thing is, if you're worried, get an assessment and put your mind at rest. And the third thing is that there are a lot of things, whilst there is no cure for autism, there are a lot of things you can do in terms of helping the development of the child.